"Oh sorry, I accidentally dropped your laptop in the pool. My name's Lucy. I'm 31, and I've always been the dependable daughter in my family. I'm the one who never asked for a dime after I turned 19. I worked my way through Northwestern University, built a solid career in digital marketing consulting, and managed to save enough for a comfortable life in my downtown Chicago apartment. My younger sister, Brianna, is the complete opposite. She's 28, still lives with our parents in their Naperville home, has bounced between at least 15 jobs, and somehow always has the latest iPhone, designer handbags, or a brand new pair of Golden Goose sneakers. Whenever anyone asks how she affords it, she just shrugs and says, "I know the right people." What she really has is a never-ending stream of money from mom and dad. And when that runs dry, she turns to me. Brianna and I have never been particularly close, mostly because every conversation eventually turns into her asking for money. The latest one started 3 weeks ago. She called me during my Tuesday morning client presentation, completely unbothered by the fact that I was pitching to a Fortune 500 company. "Luce, I need 25 grand, she said, like she was asking to borrow my Netflix password. I actually laughed at first because I thought it was a joke, but she was dead serious. Apparently, she wanted to invest in some can't-miss wellness startup with her friend Madison. The last time she had a can't-miss opportunity, it ended with her trying to sell overpriced protein powders on Instagram. I told her no immediately. I didn't have the patience to hear another one of her half-baked schemes. And even if I did, I wasn't about to hand over that kind of money. That no did not go over well. She got quiet. Too quiet. Then said, "Wow, I thought you were family," and hung up. That was Brianna's way of guilt-tripping me. In the past, that line would eventually be followed by mom calling me, saying things like, "She's your sister, Lucy. You should help her out just this once." Except just this once had happened 8 or 9 times already. Sure enough, a few hours later, mom called. She didn't even say hello before launching into it. "Brianna told me you refused to help her. She's trying to better her life, Lucy." I told her I wasn't funding her latest get-rich-quick fantasy. She sighed dramatically and said, "You've always been so cold." The next day, I decided to stop by my parents' house after work because I had left some client contracts in Dad's home office when I was helping him set up his new MacBook Pro last week. Brianna was there, sprawled out on the sectional like she owned the place, watching The Bachelor on full volume while scrolling through TikTok. We barely said 2 words to each other. I grabbed my folder and was about to leave when I realized I'd left my work laptop charging in the guest bedroom the night before. That laptop was my livelihood, custom setup, expensive hardware, all my client campaigns, and years' worth of work. I went to grab it, and just as I was unplugging it, Brianna appeared in the doorway. She leaned against the frame, smirking, and said, "Still not going to help me out?" I didn't even look up. Nope. I wish I could say what happened next was an accident, but it was too deliberate. Brianna walked past me, picked up my laptop by the edge with one hand, and before I could react, she strolled to the backyard, and without hesitation, dropped it straight into the pool. I froze. The splash echoed in my ears, and my stomach sank like a stone. "What the hell, Brianna? Are you insane?" But she just shrugged and said, "Oh sorry. Guess my hand slipped." The casual tone in her voice was infuriating. My parents came outside after hearing me yell, and before I could explain, Brianna threw up her hands and said, "It was an accident." What made my blood boil was Dad's response. He didn't ask if the laptop could be saved. He didn't ask if I had backups or how much it cost. He just looked at me and said, "Lucy, calm down. It's just an accident. It's only a laptop." Only a laptop. That laptop was worth more than Brianna's Honda Civic. And it wasn't just the cost, it was the work, the trust my clients put in me, the deadlines I had coming up. I stood there, dripping pool water from the ruined machine, staring at the people who were supposed to be my family, and realized they didn't care. "Not really." Brianna chuckled, clearly enjoying herself. "Guess you should have helped me when you had the chance." Dad didn't even scold her. Mom just rolled her eyes and muttered something about sisters being sisters. I wanted to explode, but instead, I just went quiet. I've learned that when people like my family see you angry, it only fuels them. I set the ruined laptop on the patio table and said nothing. That seemed to make Brianna uncomfortable. She expected me to yell or threaten her, but I just gave her a tight smile, grabbed my Volvo keys, and left. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the moment in my head, Brianna's smirk, Dad's dismissive tone, Mom's indifference. I could feel something shifting inside me. Normally, I'd just distance myself, maybe cut off contact for a while, but this time felt different. This wasn't just about money or disrespect. This was about crossing a line. And Brianna didn't even realize what she had done. She thought it was over. It wasn't. By the time the clock hit midnight, I had already made a few calls and changed a few passwords. Small steps, just the beginning. But at 6:30 a.m. the next morning, Brianna woke up to something she never saw coming. When I say Brianna woke up to something unexpected, I don't mean she woke up to a bang or a scream. It was quieter than that. Subtle, but enough to spark the first flicker of panic in her. She called me at 6:33 a.m., her voice tight with confusion. "Hey, my Netflix isn't working. Did you change the password?" I almost laughed. My voice stayed calm. "Yeah, Brianna, along with the Amazon Prime account, the Hulu subscription, the shared Spotify Premium, and the Disney Plus login. You don't pay for them, so you don't get to use them anymore." She was silent for a second before spitting out, "Wow, petty much," and hanging up. I thought that would be the end of it for the morning, but by 9:15 a.m., Mom was on the phone. "Lucy, I just got off the phone with Brianna. She said you're punishing her over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? That was her word for intentionally destroying a $4,500 laptop. She kept talking before I could even respond. "You know, your sister needs those accounts. She doesn't have the money to pay for them herself." I reminded her that she also didn't have the money to replace my laptop, but that point slid right past her. "You're older, Lucy. You should be setting an example, not holding grudges." I started realizing just how deep this favoritism ran. To my parents, Brianna was the baby who could do no wrong. If she made a mistake, it was my job to fix it, or at least overlook it. Mom finished the call with her usual, "We're family, Lucy. You don't turn your back on family." I hung up without answering because honestly, I was afraid if I opened my mouth, I'd say something I couldn't take back. That afternoon brought an even bigger shock. 2 days later, I found out just how far Brianna was willing to go. I was in the middle of a Zoom call with a client in Seattle when my phone started buzzing repeatedly. First, it was a couple of missed calls from Chase Bank. Then came the email with the subject line, "Unusual activity detected." My stomach dropped. I excused myself, stepped into my bedroom, and opened the message. It was a fraud alert. Someone had tried to initiate an $8,200 wire transfer from my business checking account to an account under the name Brianna L. Mitchell. My hands were trembling when I called the bank. They confirmed what I already suspected. The transfer request had been made online using my correct login credentials. I'd always kept my banking information private. My passwords were long and complex. But then I remembered my laptop, the one Brianna had dropped into the pool. It wasn't just the physical loss that hurt, it was the fact that my browser had saved passwords stored on it. Even though the hard drive had water damage, someone with enough motivation could pull data from it. And Brianna, as reckless as she was, had a friend named Connor who ran a computer repair shop in downtown Naperville. I didn't have direct proof yet, but I knew this wasn't just her messing with streaming accounts or making me look bad to the family. This was her trying to steal my actual money. I told the bank to freeze my accounts immediately. And while they handled that, I sent Brianna a text, "Call me now." She didn't respond. Instead, an hour later, I got another call, this time from Mom. "You need to stop accusing your sister of things," she said without even saying hello. I was stunned. "Wait, so she already told you?" Mom's voice hardened. "She said you froze your accounts, just to make it look like she stole from you. That's manipulative, Lucy. You know she'd never do something like that." I wanted to scream. My own mother was defending her before I'd even explained what happened. "Mom, the bank has her name on the attempted transfer," I said slowly, as if she might actually process it. "She didn't. People make mistakes when they're desperate. Maybe if you'd helped her with her business, she wouldn't be in this position." That was the moment something in me snapped. For years, I'd tolerated being painted as the cold, selfish one while Brianna got away with anything. But now, She had crossed a line there was no coming back from. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was theft, an attempt to rip away something I'd worked for my entire adult life. And my parents had made it clear, no matter what she did, they'd stand behind her. The final blow came that evening. I went to grab some packages from my apartment's mailroom, and tucked inside one of the envelopes was a notice from American Express. It was a confirmation for an additional authorized user being added to my account. The name, Brianna L. Mitchell. She hadn't just tried to take money. She was trying to make herself a permanent parasite on my finances. And she'd done it without even pretending to ask. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I could feel the betrayal settling deep in my chest, not hot, not loud but cold like ice. That night, sitting in my dimly lit living room overlooking the Chicago River, I stopped thinking of Brianna as my sister. She was just another problem to solve. And I already knew that when I solved it, it would be in a way she'd never forget. What she didn't realize was that I had a lot more than frozen accounts and password changes at my disposal. And she'd just given me the perfect reason to use all of it. The days that followed were some of the lowest I'd felt in years, not because of the money, but because of the realization that I was truly alone in my family. The fallout from Brianna's smear campaign hit harder than I expected. Word spread through the extended family, and I started getting texts that made my blood boil. My Uncle Dave messaged me, "If you're really accusing your own sister of stealing, you need therapy." My cousin Sarah sent, "We all know you've always looked down on Brianna. This is low, even for you." It didn't matter that I had proof. No one wanted to hear it. In their eyes, I was the villain, cold, calculating, and too successful for my own good. At work, things weren't much better. The destroyed laptop had set me back on deadlines for 3 major campaigns. While I'd salvaged some files from cloud backups, there were projects that needed to be rebuilt from scratch. I found myself working until 2 a.m., barely sleeping, eating Chipotle over my keyboard. Every time my phone buzzed, I braced for another message, either from the bank about more attempted charges or from a family member telling me what a terrible person I was. I thought maybe a face-to-face with my parents could fix things. But when I stopped by their house in Naperville, I didn't even make it past the front door. Dad stood in the entryway, arms crossed. "We don't appreciate the way you're treating your sister," he said flatly. "Until you apologize, I think it's best you stay away for a while." I stared at him, waiting for some hint that he was bluffing, but there was nothing in his expression except disappointment, in me, not Brianna. Behind him, I could hear her in the living room, laughing at something on Netflix. Walking back to my car that day felt like walking out of my own life. The people I thought would always have my back had chosen their side, and it wasn't mine. That night, I sat on my couch in my dark apartment, staring at my phone screen as Brianna's name lit it up. I didn't answer. Then came the voicemail, her laughing saying, "You should have just given me the money, sis. Would have saved you all this trouble." Something about hearing that broke the last thread holding me back. The frustration, the anger, the humiliation, I stopped fighting it. Instead, I let it settle, because anger burns fast and hot. But if you let it cool, it turns into something far more dangerous, patience. The next morning, I stopped reacting. I didn't respond to texts. I didn't answer calls. I didn't try to defend myself to family. I went completely silent. To them, it probably looked like I'd given up, like they'd won. And in a way, I let them think that. I kept my head down, worked through my projects, and started quietly tying up loose ends. I closed old accounts, moved funds to places Brianna couldn't touch, and called in a few favors from people outside the family, the kind of people she wouldn't even know existed. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Walking away wasn't enough. Brianna would keep taking as long as there was something to take. My parents would keep enabling her as long as they believed she was harmless. They needed to see what she really was, and she needed to feel the weight of every selfish choice she'd made. And as much as they'd like to think otherwise, I had far more control over Brianna's life than she realized. All I had to do was wait for the right moment to use it. That moment was coming sooner than she thought. It's funny how when you stop wasting energy defending yourself to people who don't want the truth, you suddenly have so much left over to build something better. The first thing I did was upgrade everything. I replaced my ruined laptop with a top-tier MacBook Pro, the kind I'd been eyeing for months but kept putting off because it felt too extravagant. Not this time. I doubled my security, invested in encrypted cloud backups, and subscribed to services that made my workflow bulletproof. The same week, I landed a new contract with a tech startup in Austin. It was bigger than any project I'd handled before, and the retainer alone covered the cost of the laptop 3 times over. The irony wasn't lost on me. Brianna had tried to sabotage me, and all she'd done was push me into a higher gear. Money started flowing in faster than I could have predicted. I streamlined my processes, hired 2 freelance designers, and freed up more of my time for strategic work instead of constant firefighting. With the extra breathing room, I started saying yes to opportunities one would have ignored before: guest speaking at marketing conferences, consulting for Fortune 500 companies, even appearing on a marketing podcast with 200,000 downloads per episode. My name was getting around, and my rates went up accordingly. But success wasn't just financial. I started reconnecting with people outside the toxic family bubble. Old friends from Northwestern, professional contacts, even a few extended relatives who'd quietly reached out to say they didn't buy into Brianna's story. I kept those conversations light, never venting about my family, just showing them I was doing well. It wasn't about proving a point, not yet. It was about planting seeds. Meanwhile, I was paying attention. From a distance, I kept tabs on Brianna. I learned her wellness startup was already falling apart, shocker, and that she'd been leaning even harder on my parents for cash, to the tune of $3,000 last month alone. I also found out she'd made the mistake of bragging to her friends about putting me in my place by ruining my laptop and turning the family against me. What she didn't realize was that a couple of those friends weren't as loyal as she thought. One of them, Kelsey, someone I vaguely knew from college, sent me screenshots of conversations that Brianna would regret ever having. Messages where she laughed about destroying my laptop, talked about how easy it was to manipulate our parents, and even joked about borrowing more money from my accounts. Between those messages, the bank records from the attempted transfer, and a few other pieces I'd collected quietly, I was starting to build something, a case. Not necessarily a legal one, at least not yet, but a blueprint for dismantling her little empire of excuses and enablement. The beauty of it was that she had no idea I was watching, listening, and stacking the cards in my favor. By the time summer rolled around, I wasn't just back on my feet, I was miles ahead of where I'd been before. My business was thriving, my network was expanding, and I was in a position where I could make moves without anyone seeing them coming. And the best part? I kept my silence. No fights, no warnings, no clues for Brianna or my parents that anything was brewing. Because when I finally decided to make my move, I didn't want them to just feel the shift. I wanted them to wonder how it happened so fast. And they were about to find out. The real turning point came when I least expected it. The real turning point came one evening when I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, Mr. Harrison, a family friend who also happened to be the senior partner at Preston & Associates, a prestigious investment firm in downtown Chicago. I bumped into him at a networking dinner for digital marketing professionals at the Peninsula Hotel. We caught up over wine afterward, and somewhere between casual conversation and business talk, Brianna's name came up. Turns out Mr. Harrison's firm had recently been approached by none other than Brianna and her business partner Madison for funding. The pitch was laughable: no real business plan, unrealistic profit margins, and a clear lack of experience. But the most interesting part? Brianna had listed me as a silent backer in her proposal. My jaw nearly hit the table. Mr. Harrison showed me a copy of the proposal on his tablet, and there it was in black and white: existing backing from Lucy Mitchell, digital marketing consultant. My credentials, my reputation being used to prop up Brianna's nonsense, without my permission. And worse, she'd attached my LinkedIn profile and client testimonials to it. If anyone in the investment world took that seriously, my name could be tied to a failing scheme I had nothing to do with. That was the moment I knew I had all the leverage I needed. I told Mr. Harrison the truth, thanked him for the heads up, and asked him to forward me a copy of the entire proposal. He did, along with an email thread showing Brianna bragging about how my involvement would make investors trust her. With that, the puzzle was complete. I had bank records of her attempted wire transfer, the unauthorized credit card addition in her name, screenshots of her bragging about ruining my laptop, evidence of her misusing my professional reputation for her fake business. On their own, any of these could cause trouble for Brianna. Together, they could burn down every bridge she had left. But I wasn't just thinking about exposing her. I wanted to control the narrative. If I timed this right, I could make sure that when Brianna's downfall came, it wouldn't look like revenge, it would look like the natural consequence of her own arrogance. And if I played it even smarter, I could make sure my parents saw the truth without me ever having to say, "I told you so." To set the stage, I began reaching out to a few key people, mutual acquaintances, colleagues of my parents, even some relatives who had influence in the local community, all under the guise of professional catch-ups. I dropped small casual mentions about hearing Brianna was working on some big project and hoping it turns out legitimate. I wasn't accusing, I was planting doubt. At the same time, I spoke to my lawyer friend Jennifer about what could be done if someone used my name without consent in a financial proposal. Let's just say her response gave me a lot of ideas and even more confidence. By the end of that month, I had positioned myself exactly where I wanted to be, secure in my career, armed with irrefutable proof of Brianna's schemes, and surrounded by people who were beginning to question the golden child image my parents had built around her. The board was set, the pieces were in place, and Brianna had no idea the game had already started. Now it was time to make my move. It began with a single email. I forwarded Brianna's entire fraudulent business proposal, the one with my name plastered all over it, to my lawyer friend Jennifer. She drafted a formal cease and desist letter, making it crystal clear that using my identity for financial gain without my consent was not only unethical but could carry serious legal consequences. The letter was delivered directly to Brianna's Gmail, her business partner Madison's inbox, and just for good measure, CC'd to my parents. I didn't call her. I didn't explain. I let the silence speak. Within hours, my phone lit up with messages from Brianna. First came the fake outrage, "You're ruining everything I've worked for." Then the guilt trip, "I thought you wanted me to do better." And finally, the threats, "You'll regret this when I make it big." I ignored every single one. Jennifer assured me that silence would rattle her more than any response. 2 days later, I made my second move. I sent the same proposal and evidence of her misuse of my name to every investor Brianna had approached. I didn't editorialize, didn't insult her, just attach the documents with a short message. This is to clarify that I have no involvement in this venture and do not endorse it in any way. Professional. Clean. Bulletproof. By the end of the week, Madison had dropped her as a partner. Investors had ghosted her, and the whispers started spreading through the same Naperville social network my parents loved to brag in. The golden child had cracks in her armor, and people were starting to notice. But I wasn't done. The third move was my favorite. I compiled the bank records of her attempted wire transfer, the unauthorized credit card edition, and the screenshots of her bragging about ruining my laptop. I packaged them neatly into a secure PDF titled "For Your Records," and sent it to my parents with a short note, "I thought you should see the whole story." No response needed. That one landed harder than I expected. Dad didn't reply. Mom sent one message, just 2 words, "We'll talk." I didn't. Finally, I pulled the quietest, most devastating string of all. Remember those friends of Brianna's who weren't as loyal as she thought? I tipped Kelsey off about a freelance contract I'd recently landed with a major retailer, the same type of influencer marketing work Brianna had been pretending to specialize in. Word got back to her that I'd secured a deal worth more than her startup ever could have made. And because I'd been so public about my recent successes, not bragging, just visible enough for her to see, she knew I wasn't just fine. I was thriving without her, in spite of her. The beauty of it all was that I never raised my voice, never posted a single angry word online, never accused her in public. I just turned on the lights and let everyone see exactly who she was. The real collapse happened faster than I expected. A week after I sent my parents the file, I got a call from my Aunt Linda, the same one who chimed in on that family group chat saying she wasn't surprised by my behavior. Her tone was different now. Careful. She told me she'd spoken to my mother and that things at the house are tense. Apparently, Dad had gone through the PDF I'd sent line by line, checking the bank statements, the credit card authorization form, and the messages Brianna had sent bragging about destroying my laptop. By the end, there was no room for excuses. It was all in Brianna's own words, in her own handwriting, with her own signature. That night, Brianna came home to find my parents waiting for her in the living room. Dad confronted her, demanding an explanation. From what I was told, she tried to spin the same tired lines. It was an accident. I didn't mean it. Lucy's making it look worse than it is. But for the first time in her life, Mom and Dad didn't bite. Dad told her to pack her things and leave. No more handouts. No more just this once. The story spread quickly. Those same relatives who had been so quick to believe her now knew the truth. And the silence from their end was deafening. Friends stopped taking her calls. Her so-called business contacts cut her off. Even her connections for quick cash started ghosting her. The golden child image was shattered, and all that was left was Brianna, broke, unemployed, and exposed. The last time I saw her was 6 weeks later. I was leaving Starbucks near my apartment when I spotted her across Michigan Avenue, wearing the same wrinkled leggings she used to lounge around the house in, shoulders slumped, staring at a cracked phone screen. She looked smaller somehow, not just physically, but like the air had gone out of her. Our eyes met for a second. She didn't smirk this time. She didn't say a word. She just looked away and walked off. I didn't feel triumph exactly. It was something quieter, steadier, a deep, unshakable satisfaction that justice had been served without me lowering myself to her level. I'd given her every chance to stop, to grow up, to respect boundaries. She chose not to. And in the end, she had destroyed herself with nothing more than her own greed and arrogance. As for my parents, they've been keeping their distance. We exchange polite messages on holidays, but the endless lectures about helping family have stopped. I think they finally understand that enabling Brianna wasn't helping her, it was just protecting her from consequences she desperately needed to face. And me? My business is stronger than ever. My life is peaceful, and my boundaries are rock solid. Because if there's one thing this whole mess taught me, it's this: sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't destroying someone. It's simply stepping back and letting them destroy themselves.